So welcome to the BC Regional Science and Technology Network's video series on access to capital and helping to get your early stage company up and running. We have a really interesting topic today, and with us we have Tom O'Flaherty. Tom has started companies, he's been an investor, he's been a CEO, he's been in the product development side, so he's really seen a lot. And he's worked with companies you may know like Simply Accounting and Maximizer. So thanks for being here, Tom. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about what we need to know to determine if we need an investor and if we're going to be able to find one.
Thank you, Dan. Really what we need to address here are two key questions, and I show this on the first slide. The first question is, do I really need a chunk of other people's money and able to make this business go? And will I get this money either through debt, that is to say a loan, or equity, where I sell shares to an investor who provides the cash to me?
So Tom, obviously, you know, there's a couple of decisions to be made. What are some of the things that you look at to help you decide whether or not your company is appropriate for investment?
So first of all, we look at the type of business. The three basic types of businesses are resellers, businesses that are service-based, and businesses that are development-based. These can be quite easily explained. Resellers are businesses that buy articles from usually a manufacturer and sell them, like automobiles, groceries, computers, whatever. Services businesses are people doing things, legal services, accounting services, custom programmers, and so on. Development companies are companies where usually a founder gets an idea, and that idea has to be rendered into a product, and then that product has to be taken to market.
So it sounds like you're delineating the resellers and the services from the development companies. So tell me a little bit more about resellers and services.
The business models of resellers and services are quite a bit different. Resellers may be able to generate revenue fairly quickly because they are purchasing finished articles, an automobile, a head of lettuce, that can be sold immediately to generate cash flow. In addition, resellers may have something that they can offer as collateral to a bank. So let's take automobiles, for instance. So an automobile dealer can get funding from a bank, ideally, to be able to finance the things that the business is selling. Services companies can also generate quicker revenue because there are people doing things like custom programming or accounting. And so there you may be able to generate quick cash flow. The flip side of that is that services businesses generally don't have any assets in them that can be offered as collateral, but they may be able to qualify as debt. What I really need to say here is that resellers and services are not likely to attract an equity investor because they don't have the ability to grow quickly or to grow very large and provide the big gains that an equity investor might need. So that gets us down to development companies.
And when you refer to whether or not they can grow, you're really talking about the scalability. That when they're selling somebody else's product and they're building certain margins, or when they're selling services, their product is really man hours, and so that doesn't scale at the same rate as if you developed a software product that you could sell over and over and over again.
Yes, Dan, that's an excellent point. There is this whole business of scale. Equity investors need to make a big return on their money because it's such a risky business, and you're right, a business that is dependent on hiring the right number of people and allowing them to do their daily work doesn't have the scalability of a development company. That's a software product or a website or a pharmaceutical.
So tell us about development companies, Tom.
First of all, it takes time and money to actually make something, to render something from an idea to something to sell. During that time, there's no cash flow, obviously, and generally there's no assets to be able to offer to a lender as security. There's just simply intellectual property. There's ideas in people's minds. However, because in theory these businesses have a lot of scalability, and if they get it right they have the potential for great growth, they should be able to interest an equity investor.
So I think that's an interesting point, Tom. You know, we've separated into debt and equity investment and said that if you have assets that you can get the debt investment from banks or other traditional lenders. Would you say that it's better to get debt before you go after equity if you can?
If you're able to, Dan, that's fine. But many of us, and myself included, have had the humiliating experience of going to a bank prior to having cash flow with nothing to offer as collateral and being turned away. So in a development business, I wouldn't waste my time looking for debt, unless it's from a friend or a family, and that's a whole different issue. I would start to gear up for an equity investment as soon as possible.
Okay, so assuming we're talking about development companies, how much money do they need and where can they go and get it?
There are really three stages that need to be funded in the sort of company that I assume we're talking to here. First of all, it's the setting up in a garage or bedroom to start rendering the idea into product. So here, typically, you've got to buy some secondhand furniture, maybe buy some PCs, incorporate a company, pay a little rent. And this money is generally tens of thousands of dollars, and you're probably going to get that from family and friends. The next stage is a little more difficult, and that is rendering this product into something that you can actually sell. And here, really, you have to take a guesstimate of how much time and money that's going to take. And we all get it wrong. So whatever number you guess, double it, or even triple it. And this is the sort of money that you'll need to go to an angel firm or something like that to get. The third stage is actually taking it to market. And that becomes a little more difficult to guess because there are many, many different ways of taking a product to market.
So Tom, you've just talked about the different stages from the love money to the angel money to the larger VC money. Can you tell us about some of your personal experiences with that?
Yes, I guess I can recall two experiences. One with Simply Accounting. We found that advertising in some of the magazines that smaller businesses read really worked for us. And so we had to raise money to buy full-page advertisements in some of those magazines. Maximizer was largely a retail play, and there we had to buy a lot of what are called market development funds in some of the large U.S. retailers. And you have to do that sometimes 6 months ahead of actually having the product on the shelves. So those were two examples where we had to raise fairly significant money after the product was finished, but to actually get it to market.
Have you found that it's easier to raise investment capital for marketing purposes or for actual product development?
Oh, by far, I'd rather raise money for marketing than development. And this presumes that you've got some customers already buying your product and saying the right things about it. So that's a big barrier to get through. There are a number of people that do invest money pre the revenue stage for development, but there's not nearly as many that prefer to do that as prefer to wait until you're actually in market. So I'd rather raise money when I've got something to sell than before I've got something to sell. But both can be done.
And is the reason that you want to raise it when you have something to sell based on getting a better valuation from the investors so you don't have to give up as much equity?
Dan, let me put that in context. We discussed three different places to raise money. First, you're starting up in a garage. Second, you're developing the product to take to market. And third, you're going to marketing. And yes, you're absolutely right. Each of those stages provides a better valuation than the other. So if you tried to raise the $1 million or $2 million that you might need to go to market way back at the idea stage, first, that would be a very, very tough thing to do. And secondly, the valuation would be far lower than if you waited until you actually got to market. So you're right, in a perfect world, you raise a little bit to get started, you raise a little more to get the product to market, and then you raise a whole bunch more to take it to market, and each of those should be at better and better valuations as far as the founder's concerned.
Okay, Tom, so we've talked a lot about taking a product to market, and it seems like there's a number of ways to do that with a variety of cost models. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
That's a good point, and I'm glad you asked it, because in the examples I gave in my two previous companies, we were actually taking the product to market ourselves. And there's various other ways of doing that. If you're developing, for instance, a pharmaceutical product, you're almost certainly going to license that to one of the large pharmacy companies to take to market. So the burden of going to market is theirs, and they're the ones that will raise the money. They probably already have it in order to take it to market. If you're developing a hardware product like a medical device, now you've got the additional hurdle of how are you going to make it before you take it to market. You might contract that out, you may set up a production line yourself. And then finally, a number of software products are actually not sold directly to end users, as Simply Accounting and Maximizer were, but are embedded in other software products, like business intelligence software was embedded in spreadsheets and databases. And so they took it to market through another company. And so you're right, depending on how you take it to market depends on, do you have to raise any money at all, and if you do, how much and what for.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Tom. So assuming you as a viewer that is watching this video has determined that you're a development company and that you're going to be looking for equity investing, one of the things you can do is look to angel forums. And so the next slide that we have here shows you some of the BC regional angel forums that you may want to participate in and how to get in touch with them. We hope you enjoyed this video and join us for the next video on the perfect investor pitch.